Hey there, ballers. What's going on? Hope you had a great weekend taking in all the postseason action. I'm your host once again, Joe Grado. I want to thank you for tuning in to our Monday edition of Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. Today is Monday, October 13th. We got a bit to unpack. We are shrinking the field of the postseason remaining contenders as we came and saw the remainder of each league's respective division series, with the ALDS coming to an end between the Detroit Tigers and Seattle Mariners. And over in the National League, we saw Game 5 between the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll be sure to provide a Game 5 recap on each of those, give our thoughts on each team's performance, and the outlook moving forward to the next round. And speaking of the next round, we'll be sure to give you a preview of the American League and National League Championship Series with as much information that we have readily available to us at the time of recording. And then we'll wrap today's show giving out some major awards for some regular season performances in both the AL and NL. So certainly a baseball jam-packed show, and we're excited to start off your week buzzing with all the baseball that is hot in the streets. After the opening music, we'll get on right to it. Play ball. All right there, ballers. Once again, thank you for tuning in to our Monday show. We appreciate each and every one of you continuing to tune in to hear our thoughts on everything going around Major League Baseball. But before we jump into today's show, just want to give you a reminder of where you can continue to follow along with Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. So as we have mentioned and continue to mention, you can find our podcast episodes, which are typically offered twice per week on your favorite podcast platform. Wherever you listen to all of your podcasts, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and so much more. Wherever you can listen to a podcast, we'll probably pop up there for sure. And be sure to continue to follow along with our social media content on Instagram at Bases, Barrels, Ball Players, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Bases, Barrels 25. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel, Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. It'll have the yellow logo just like you see behind us, with video editions of our episodes, as well as baseball content that we have created, such as player interviews, visits to different baseball destination cities, and so much more. And there's going to be plenty more to come in 2026 for sure. And be sure to become an official subscriber on our Patreon site, patreon.com/Bases, Barrels, Ball Players, for just $2 a month. You'll be entered to win monthly Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players t-shirts, MLB autograph memorabilia, tickets to future MLB games, and so much more, as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right. With that, let's kick off the show today and recap the Game 5s that went down over the weekend. So we will start in order of the way they were completed. And the first was Friday night in Seattle, Detroit Tigers versus Seattle Mariners. Win or go home. Winner would go on to face the Toronto Blue Jays in the American League Championship Series, with an opportunity to represent the American League in the World Series. Game 5 was Skubal versus Kirby. It's win or go home time. Mariners would get on the board first off Skubal via a Mitch Garver sacrifice fly, bringing home Josh Naylor to make it 1-0 Seattle after 2. From there, both pitchers were in lockstep in a duel until the 6th, as Kerry Carpenter keeps the power back going and smashes a go-ahead 2-run home run in the 6th inning to move the Tigers ahead 2-1. Skubal would be done after 6 and in line for the victory after racking up a postseason record number of strikeouts in an elimination game. Skubal went 6 innings, allowed 2 hits, 1 run, no walks, 13 strikeouts. Impressive stuff from the most likely back-to-back Cy Young Award winner. On to the 7th we go. Kyle Finnegan in for the Tigers. Leo Rivas steps in, the birthday boy for the Mariners. He would come through with a game-tying RBI single to tie the game back up, this time at 2 apiece. Settled in from there, it would be a while until we would figure out the victor in this one, as it turned into the battle of the bullpens. 2-2 through the 8th, through the 9th, still tied after 9. That would mean some free baseball. 5 more scoreless innings of work from the Seattle pen. Tigers would have 4, meaning we must be taking this one all the way to the bottom of the 15th inning. After the Mariners loaded the bases with 1 out, the stage was set for Jorge Polanco. And deliver he would, as Polanco laces an RBI single to right field to bring home the game's winning run. Ball game over. Seattle wins 3-2, and they're partying like it's 2001 in the Pacific Northwest as they head back to the ALCS for the first time in 24 years. So this was a heck of a series. Like I had mentioned in previous episodes, this was my favorite postseason series of the division round. So competitive. These two teams were tightly contested every step of the way, and no big deal. But we did predict a 3-2 victory for the Mariners. Didn't know it would go in this fashion. We thought it would be in the walk-off variety, but nevertheless, this was as intense as it gets. And congratulations to the Seattle Mariners. They're back into the ALCS for the first time since 2001. We'll get to them in a second here. We'll start with the team on the losing side here, the Detroit Tigers. Want to commend them on the fight, right? And this is such a heartbreaking way for your season to end. You come this close, you can circle and pinpoint multiple opportunities early in the game to move runners into scoring position, drive in runners in scoring position. Shout out the Seattle pitching for keeping them down. But, you're going to kick yourself and probably miss a couple of opportunities if you're the Tigers that you could have been on the other side of this for sure. But they've certainly faced adversity head on later in this season than expected. At one point this year, I'm sure they've heard it, and I'm sure they've heard it enough at this point. They were up 15 and a half games in the division against Cleveland. They were up as many as 11 games. It comes down to the last week. The Cleveland Guardians overtake them for the AL Central crown, and Detroit just does just enough to stay alive and hold on to the third and final wild card spot. One game difference, they would have been on the outside looking in, and they would have finished one game worse than the Houston Astros. But nevertheless, that didn't faze them. They had an opportunity again. This time they had to go to Cleveland for a best-of-3 wild card short series because the Guardians had won the division title, meaning they would play host that round. Detroit wins in 3 games. So they have an opportunity. They overcome that adversity. Even in this series, too, as well. They go into Seattle, they split, then they come home, they lose game 3. Their backs are against the wall once again. They take care of business in game 4 and send this series back to Seattle, feeling good, knowing that they probably have one more game of a good brand of baseball in them at least. And this is nothing to hang your head on. Seattle's a very good team, and I think they were just a little bit better and executed just a little bit more in the end. But they were right there in lockstep, which is why you got to feel for the heartbreak in the Tigers clubhouse. I mean, that bullpen kept answering the bell more times than not. And they just the offense didn't do enough. But, hey, that's the type of series it was. It came down to pitching and defense. I thought both held their own extremely well, and this was the tightest series, potentially of the postseason, in my opinion. So that's how all sports go. That's how baseball is. Someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. And this time around, it was the Tigers. But I expect them to be back in this position. You can see their franchise was ascending over the last couple of years with Hinch at the helm. They'll have to make a couple of tweaks, I would say, improve the overall defense. The pitching's there. You got to make it a priority to keep Skubal in the building. And I know he's entering 2026 in the last year of his deal, and you're wondering, while you're there, you want to do everything you can to keep him in town. So that would be the top of my priority list if I was the Detroit general manager. We're doing everything I can to get a Skubal extension signed. If I'm Skubal, I go to free agency because you are at the peak of your powers and you want to get as much of your market value as possible. We'll see what happens. I think it's a good relationship there. I would love to see Skubal continue to be the ace in the Motor City, but time will tell. And then they'll have some other free agents to bring back or consider bringing back, like Gleyber Torres. I think had a positive effect at the top of that order. Did kind of go cold in the postseason, but I do think his experience is valuable in that clubhouse. I thought it was a good fit. And it was really cool to see the renaissance of Javi Baez and see if he can build upon that to have another good season and let everyone know that he has finally returned after some time away from some down performances. But congrats to them. They overcame some adversity, and I do think they'll be back in some capacity for the 2026 season indeed. Now over to the happy clubhouse, the Seattle Mariners. Like I've started to mention, congrats to them. They're partying like it's 2001. First time that they have been to the ALCS in 24 years. It's hard to fathom because they've had some good players come in and out of that franchise. I guess they just haven't been able to put it together as a complete unit. But they have this year. So much to like here. And Polanco, he hits the walk-off to send them to the ALCS 30 years exactly after Edgar Martinez, who is the current Seattle Mariners hitting coach, did it for the Mariners back in 95, where he beat the Yankees on a walk-off double, bringing home Griffey, I believe it was, to send them in the old Kingdome. That place was rocking. T-Mobile Park was rocking as well. So exciting parallels there, and I'm sure Martinez was reliving that partially. I don't know if he actually said that, but it's hard to, as a former ball player and competitor that, we have all these memories locked up in some games that stand out. I'm sure that must have been rushing through his mind at some point. But job well done. Seattle, it's been a dream season for them indeed. Winning the American League West, taking that crown back from the Houston Astros, winning your first playoff game in 24 years. Now you're through the division round, and you have an opportunity to keep on advancing and get back to the World Series. So that's some impressive stuff there. And now they're tasked with heading to Toronto for Game 1, which should be happening tonight. By the time this is recorded, Game 1 will have been completed, so we'll be sure to recap it on our next show for sure. But definitely definitely looking forward to checking out that series. I do think that's going to be another tightly contested one. And during our preview of the championship series, we'll let you know when, well, like I said, it's going to be happening. It already would have happened yesterday, but we'll let you know when you can experience the rest of this championship series indeed. But yeah, that's a wrap on the American League. The Seattle Mariners have an opportunity to go up against the Blue Jays. Winner of that best of 7 will be representing the American League in the World Series. But before we get to all that, let's see how the division series, the final series, wraps up this past Saturday night. The Chicago Cubs coming off 2 wins at Wrigley, coming back from down 0-2, looking to come all the way back against MLB's best Milwaukee Brewers, who are looking to hold off the Cubs, continue their home dominance in this postseason, and advance to the National League Championship Series for the first time since 2018. Both teams would be coming in on fumes in terms of pitchers on the hill, as they both went through their bullpens and are now scrambling to figure out how to get through 9 more innings. Drew Pomeranz would be tasked for the Cubs, the 36-year-old lefty. He had recorded 15 straight outs this postseason and made his way back from an elbow injury that actually held him out of baseball from 2022 to 24. So a very heartfelt story there. He'd have an opportunity to aid the Cubbies in getting back to the NLCS. McGill, the closer, Trevor McGill would be the opener for the Brewers. He's normally, Tyler McGill would be the opener for the Brewers. They would be going with their closer to hopefully start a game with allowing a run in the first. Without allowing a run to the first, every game this series, they've allowed at least 1 or more runs to the Cubs. This kind of change of strategy was from Pat Murphy to kind of give their own club an opportunity to jump out ahead and play ahead. He wanted to go with a plan of pitching and defense. That's what's gotten them this far. He figured in this winner-go-home scenario, got to go with your A game plan. And it certainly happened. McGill goes 1, 2, 3 practically through the Cubs' top of the order, keeping them off the scoreboard, giving the Brewers an opportunity to get the scoring started in this one. And getting the scoring started in this one, the Brew Crew would do. They would show off their power as William Contreras, the catcher, would blast one to left for a solo home run, his second of the series. Milwaukee's up early. It's 1-0 after the first. On would come the Miz, Jacob Mizorowski, to be the bulk reliever in this one. And Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs would welcome him to the game, hitting a solo home run of his own, his second of the series and his third of the postseason. Cubbies get an immediate answer, tying this game up at 1 in the second. To the fourth we go. Andrew Vaughn of the Brewers would smash a solo home run to left off Cubs reliever Colin Ray to give the Brewers a 2-1 lead. They would extend their lead in the 7th via the solo home run once again. As Bryce Terang leaves the yard off Andrew Kitteridge, it's now 3-1 Brew Crew. 3 homers, 3 runs. Getting all of your runs off of the power variety is not typical of the Brewers, but they do have that in their toolbox. That is all they would need in this one for the Brewers. It would go McGill to Mizorowski to Ashby to Patrick to Uribe. Ball game over. Brewers win 3-1 and take the NLDS 3-2 over the Chicago Cubs. So again, just like we did for the American League, let's start with the team on the losing end, the Chicago Cubs. I got to commend them from coming off a year where they did not make the postseason. Their first-year manager, Craig Counsell, who was the long-term manager with the Milwaukee Brewers, had a rough season. They kind of retooled their philosophy, got more guys that worked with how they wanted to be successful, and it worked. It got them to the postseason. It got them through the National League wildcard round, winning 2 out of 3 against the San Diego Padres, and had them on the brink of sending home the Brewers in a must-win, winner-go-home Game 5. So nothing to hang their head about. I think the one thing that they'll be scratching their heads at is the lack of offense throughout the whole postseason. I mean, even during their victorious wild card round, and through this series, they only scored more than 3 runs once, and they won a game in Wrigley 4-3. That's asking a lot from a pitching staff that seemed gassed, right? And it seemed like that's kind of what held this team back, is their starting pitching didn't have the capability to go as deep into games as this Cubs team would have liked. Their bullpen was lights out and electric, and shout out to them. I think they had a lot more arsenal in the tank than I even realized, but they've got a lot of quality arms at that back end to really bridge a game from the starter to holding on to a victory. So I can see where this Cubs team, there's many reasons why they won 90-plus games and got to the postseason here. But the offense went blank in this one, and it was just unfortunate. They just needed a little bit more. They were, and I believe they finished this series hitting one more home run than the Brewers did, but they just didn't get enough. They weren't able to connect as many at-bats together as the Brewers did throughout the series. Obviously, the Brewers, it seemed like, took a page out of the Cubs' book for this Game 5 and relied on solo home runs to lead them to victory. But I think they were also leaning on their effective bullpen pitching and going with their defense first guys. So you can see how close this series was. I do think this is a rivalry brewing for years to come. You can even see when the Brewers did win and they took a team photo after the division series victory. The Cubs have a famous tradition of flying the W at Wrigley after games. They had their own flag made, which was they flew the L. So I'm sure that'll be burning in the minds of Cubs fans, and that'll be bulletin board material in that clubhouse next year, I'm sure, when these two teams face off. So a little friendly bantering there, but sure, it won't sit well with the Cubby faithful, and that'll be something to start for next year for sure. But congrats to the Cubs on a good year. I do think this is something to build back on, that you finally got that postseason emotion back in the building. I believe that was their first postseason victory of the Cubbies that they got against the Padres. First postseason win since either 2017 or 18. So a lot to like, but I do think they're going to have some questions, including their big fish that they got in a trade from Houston, Kyle Tucker. There's a lot of questions surrounding if this is going to be his last year as a Cub. As he does enter free agency, there's going to be a lot of suitors wanting his services. You wonder if he'll go back to the north side to play in the friendly confines of Wrigley, or if he's going to be donning a new home, somewhere else in the National League, or potentially one of the American League suitors. So it'll be something that we're certainly going to track here at Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players as we move closer into the offseason and move into free agency tracker. I'm sure you'll be hearing Kyle Tucker's name thrown around a lot. So that will be some to come. And just wanted to mention Drew Pomeranz. He pitched 2 2/3 innings here. Though he was quite effective, only made the one mistake really. And really a heartfelt story there. The heart of a competitor, truly. He had an opportunity. He could have hung him up right back in 2022, but he just didn't have any. He didn't quit, basically. He kept coming back and kept rehabbing that elbow. He had a couple setbacks. There was at one point, they were telling the story during the broadcast, where one day he was preparing to go pitch in a AAA game, and he was missing something of his daughter's. And he was really questioning, why is he going at his age to go pitch in AAA, where he made his dream come true. He was a professional pitcher, and he didn't want to miss out on anything else. But that's just a testament that he was rewarded for his will and to keep moving forward. And now by next season, he will be 37. You wonder if that's going to be it for him. But if so, this would be a way to tie the bow on it. He made his way back, had a pretty good 2025, a really good 2025 postseason, but nothing to hang his head about here. He did his part, giving the Cubs every opportunity to swing their way back in this one. I just wanted to shout out Seiya Suzuki. I feel like he was the most consistent hitter for the Cubs that showed up in the postseason in his first postseason. He hit 2 home runs, had 4 RBIs in the series, certainly did his part, but didn't get enough from his supporting cast. And then over on the winning side, congratulations to the Milwaukee Brewers. It's been another dream season for them. A lot of national media counted them out due to their departures. They weren't sure if they were going to retool and be able to have the team to not only win the division, but even get back into the postseason. These group of what they're calling themselves the average Joes are proving the world wrong. And they have another opportunity here to advance and represent the National League in the World Series. They get through their rival The Chicago Cubs winning the best of five, 3-2. It was a hard-fought, tight series. You know, the way things started in Milwaukee, they won the first two pretty convincingly. Didn't think it would go five and make its way back to Milwaukee, but nevertheless, the Cubs showed fight, and the Brewers continued to overcome that adversity. They needed to figure out how they were going to piece together 9 more innings. They did. They figured out multiple ways that they can beat you. They can beat you with contact ability at the plate. They can beat you with good defense, good pitching. But they also showed their other tool in their toolbox, their power. They're like, oh yeah, hold on, this park is built for home runs too as well. So they took a page out of the Cubs book and beat them that way, and let their pitching and defense take them the rest of the way. So now the Brewers are on to the National League Championship Series for the first time since 2018. This will be a rematch. They are now going to be facing the Los Angeles Dodgers for the 3 seed. So the NLCS runs through Milwaukee, which is good for them. Last time these two teams faced off, the Milwaukee Brewers lost in 7 games to the Dodgers, who the Dodgers eventually lost to the Boston Red Sox in the 2018 World Series. Brewers will be looking to get that revenge, but also continue sitting on that moniker of these average Joes, proving the baseball world wrong, and having an opportunity to get back to the World Series since 1982. They've never won a World Series in their franchise history. They lost that 1982 World Series in 7 games to the St. Louis Cardinals. So that's a wrap on the division series. We do know that now both championship series are set, and we will get to a little preview here. We are down to the final 4, little championship series preview. Over in the American League, it's going to be the Seattle Mariners taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. In the National League, it'll be the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. So before we get into a little preview, just want to give you a setup of what you can expect in this round. So now we are getting to a little bit longer of a series. So for the championship series, the victor will need to be the best in the best of 7. So now the winner must win 4 games out of 7 to advance on to the World Series. So we'll start over in the American League. The rosters are set. Just some things to note. Bo Bichette is actually continuing to rehab from an ankle injury, so he's not going to be on this ALCS roster. He was making his way back. He finally hit off live pitching earlier in the week, but then I think there was a report this past Saturday he was running the bases and was still feeling significant discomfort when he was cutting, so not an opportunity for him to make an impact in this series. But some good news, because you saw at the end of that American League Division Series for the Blue Jays that they had to go with an opener for Game 4 just because they were so short on starting pitching. Well, they are going to get 2 veterans back, Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett. They're clear. They're ready to go. They are going to be able to start a couple of games if needed for the Blue Jays. So that will give them some much needed starting pitching depth, and that'll make a team that's already rocking and rolling just a little bit more deadly. Head-to-head on the air, Toronto actually did hold the advantage here. They won 4 out of 6 games. They were 4-2. They lost 2 out of 3 in their building to the Mariners, and that series took place from April 18th to the 20th. Before the Blue Jays, this series shifted to Seattle later in the year in May, actually, so not too far later. Well, I don't know what I'm saying there. But from May 9th to May 11th, these two teams faced off, and the Blue Jays actually took all 3 of those games. So it'll be very interesting. I know it was so long ago, but it's always good to see some level of familiarity when 2 teams are facing off. So how they got here, Toronto Blue Jays, they took 3 out of 4 in the ALDS against the New York Yankees, while Seattle, as you just heard from our recap, they beat the Detroit Tigers in 5. They won the ALDS 3-2. They advanced via a Jorge Polanco walk-off single to right field in the 15th inning, bringing the Mariners back to the ALCS for the first time since 2001. Now, we're going to give you some game times and the starting pitching matchups that we know. We don't know most of the pitching matchups because they seem to be releasing these as the week goes on, but we definitely know what days and the locations of each game will be as well. So follow along with us here. So game 1, Sunday night, is Bryce Miller of the Seattle Mariners going up against Kevin Gausman. That's going to be an 8:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:03 p.m. Pacific Time first pitch. Like I mentioned at the time that you'll be hearing this game will have already happened. So then we'll shift to game 2, which will be tonight, which the Mariners have not, at the time of recording, announced their starter. The Blue Jays have. They're going to be sending out rookie Trey Savage who did some remarkable things in the American League Division Series. We'll be looking to build upon that. That'll be tonight, 5:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:03 p.m. Pacific. That game also will be in Toronto. Game 3 will be Wednesday, since Tuesday will be a travel day. Wednesday, October 15th, the series will shift to Seattle. We don't know times or starting pitching matchups, and that's the right way it is for the rest of the series. Game 4 will be Thursday, October 16th, also in Seattle. And then Game 5, this is when the if necessary come in. So if one team sweeps the other and wins the first 4 games, that winner will move on to the World Series. It's just until that winning team gets that 4th victory in the series. So games 5 through 7 are all if necessary, depending on the outcomes of the series. So game 5 would be Friday in Seattle as well, before game 6 would be in Toronto on Sunday, and game 7 would be also in Toronto on Monday, October 20th. So that is when you could expect to view all of the championship series games in the American League. Be sure to follow along with us on our social media sites. We'll be sure to keep you updated as soon as we know this information, so you know when you can tune in and watch some exciting postseason baseball. Some key players here in this series. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the Blue Jays, he'll look to stay hot in the postseason thus far. He's batting a hot .529, which is 9 for 17 with 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, and a 1.609 OPS. He has had some good supporting cast assistants as well. Ernie Clement, he's hitting .643 thus far, 9 for 14 with a home run, 5 runs batted in, and a 1.554 OPS. And Dalton Varsho, the outfielder, he's hitting .438 on the year with in the postseason thus far, 7 for 16, which is 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, and a 1.471 OPS. And then some key players for Seattle. They are going to have to rely on the foundation that got them here to this point and what they've been building over the last couple of years. The strength of their starting pitching rotation. They're going to need to go deep in games and then let their back of the bullpen cook. So their starting pitching is key here of Bryce Miller, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, and Luis Castillo. That is a fearsome foursome indeed. And then they're going to be led by AL MVP candidate Cal Raleigh, who's hitting .381 in the postseason thus far with a home run, 4 RBIs, and a 1.071 OPS. And another key factor will be center fielder Julio Rodriguez. He's had 2 game-tying hits and 2 go-ahead hits in the postseason thus far. He'll be looking and needing to come through with runners in scoring position in tight moments for this club thus far. So our prediction, we kind of deliberated here. We went back and forth. I think it's going to be a very tightly contested series. Don't think it's going to go 7. I do believe, just based on the nature of the momentum that Toronto has and the rest that they're going to have to be able to reset their bullpen and starters, I think they're just going to have a slight advantage. And their style of play, I just think, is built for this time of year with their a little bit more contact ability and seeing contributions up and down the lineup, where you can see Seattle can be a little bit top heavy with their offensive production. Not saying that trend is going to continue in this series, but just based on what I've seen, I think Toronto has the slight edge here. I do think we're going with the Toronto Blue Jays are going to win in 6 games and advance to the World Series to represent the American League. All right. Now let's get over to our other preview in the National League for the National League Championship Series. The Los Angeles Dodgers, the defending World Series champions, they're looking to advance back to the World Series in back-to-back years. They'll be heading to Milwaukee for Game 1, taking on MLB's best, the Milwaukee Brewers. So head-to-head this year, actually, it's kind of crazy. The Brewers are 6-0. They've won all 3 games in LA and all 3 games in Milwaukee. So the first 3 actually took place in Milwaukee from July 7th to July 9th, so a little bit more recent. They won all 3. And then they went to LA from July 18th to the 20th and won all 3 of those games too as well. I don't know how much credence it's going to build for the postseason round, but nevertheless, I do think that's going to give a little confidence in that Brewers clubhouse where, again, you know, the national media is going to be counting them out, thinking the mighty, mighty Dodgers are here. They're just going to cakewalk their back to the World Series and be the back-to-back champs, or at least have an opportunity to do so. But how these 2 teams got here. So the Dodgers did take 3 of 4 from the Phillies. They won 3-1 in the best of 5. They won Game 4 2-1 on a throwing error from Phillies reliever Orion Kerkering. He had a soft ground ball hit back to him. He bobbled it, picked it up, had an opportunity to get the out of first base and advance to the 12th inning. but instead he picked it up, threw it well over JT Realmuto's head at the plate, and that's how the series ended. That's how the Phillies season ended, and that's how the Dodgers advanced on to the NLCS. And I do think the Dodgers are going to be a tough opponent. The strength of their starting pitching is immense, and they do continue to get timely hitting from their notable postseason contributors like Teoscar and Kike Hernandez. But they haven't been necessarily as dominant in their performance. We'll get to them in a minute, but very intrigued to see how that translates up in Milwaukee and in this best-of-7 series. Milwaukee Brewers, on the other hand, they went the distance in their series, and like we mentioned in the Game 5 recap, they won this series 3-2 over the Cubs by winning Game 5 3-1 on the strength of 3 solo home runs and an absolute gem of performance from their vaunted bullpen. So this will be an interesting matchup. Speaking of matchups, we'll get to what we know. And all we know now is times and dates. For the first 2 games, they haven't announced starting pitchers at the time of recording. But same thing that we did with the American League. We'll let you know what dates and location where these games will be taking place. And we'll keep you updated as much as we can on social media once we get the regarded information. So game 1 is going to be tonight, 8:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:08 p.m. Pacific. Game 1 is going to be in Milwaukee. Game 2 is tomorrow night, 8:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:08 Pacific. That will also be in Milwaukee. And then game 3 will be Thursday. Wednesday will be a travel day for these 2 clubs. Thursday, October 16th, the series will shift to Los Angeles. Game 4, Friday, October 17th, will also be in Los Angeles. Then from here, games 5 through 7 are all, if necessary. Saturday, October 18th, would be in Los Angeles. And then game 6 would be Monday, October 20th, back in Milwaukee. And game 7 would be Tuesday, October 21st, also in Milwaukee. So by that date, we should have a pretty clear idea of who is going to be in this year's Fall Classic World Series. And no matter who comes out of these Final 4, I do think we're in for some high quality baseball indeed. Some key pitchers or key players, like I mentioned. So I do think the Dodgers are going to have to lean on the strength of their starting pitching. They have depth of pitching galore. The 4 of Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Shohei Ohtani, and Blake Snell are as good as it comes. And I do think that's going to be the best quality and crop of pitchers that the Brewers have faced all year in such a short period of time. But we'll see if that is say all end all, because the one Dodgers Achilles heel, I will say, has been their bullpen. So that could give the Brewers an opportunity late in this one to come back if they are down in a smaller deficit indeed. Dodgers did kind of shore up their back end of bullpen issues. Roki Sasaki, the rookie, has been an absolute find and gem. He's all of a sudden ramping it up to 101, 102, and being nails at the end of the game. So that is something that's going to help the Dodgers win and potentially close out those 9th inning close games. It's just a matter of if they're going to be able to find a consistent solution, bridging the gap from their starter to Sasaki. Also, some other key players to watch. Mookie Betts, he's been finding his postseason form indeed. So far, he's hitting .385 in the postseason, which is 10 for 26 with 4 runs batted in and 3 doubles and hitting to a 1.005 OPS. And Teoscar Hernandez, he's having a fine postseason himself. He's hitting .308 on the year with 8 which is 8 for 26 with 3 home runs, 9 runs batted in, and a 1.026 OPS. And over on the Milwaukee side, just like the Dodgers are going to have to lean on the strength of their starting pitching, I do think Milwaukee has the advantage here with their bullpen depth. I know these guys have been through the ringer. They've been called upon multiple times and continue to answer their bell. They're going to continue to need to answer that bell if this team wants to advance onto the World Series for the first time since 1982. Some other key players here, Jackson Chourio. He's been a stud this postseason. He's hitting .389, which is 7 for 18 with a home run and 6 RBIs, hitting to a 1.088 OPS. And catcher William Contreras, he's hitting an even .300 thus far, which is 6 for 20, 2 homers, 3 RBIs, and a .983 OPS. All right. Before we get to our last segment, just want to give us our prediction here. So on the American League side, we predicted the Toronto Blue Jays to win in 6. I believe that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to win this series in 6 as well. They are going to avenge their 2018 loss to the Dodgers. I do think this is a much sounder product of the Brewers. I love the way their contact ability is. I love the way they play the game. They have excellent pitching. They have timely hitting. I do think they do the little things right. Nothing against the Dodgers. I just think the way with these two teams are at right now, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Brewers. I do think this is going to be a tightly contested series, definitely back and forth. But I definitely see the Brewers coming through here. And that'll be an exciting time for the Milwaukee faithful. They've been waiting a long time coming. And like I've mentioned multiple times in the show, it'd be the first time that the Brewers have appeared in the World Series since 1982. So that would be a fun, refreshing series. Based on our predictions, we are predicting that the Toronto Blue Jays will be facing off the Milwaukee Brewers in this year's World Series. Certainly for baseball fans everywhere, that would be an absolute joy and treat. All right. Before we get on out of here, we are just going to do our flashback to the regular season and conclude our major awards for the season. So we're just going to give a few like comeback player of the year, manager, things like that. We'll go one by one, give you their statistics, and then get on out of here and let you prepare for some postseason baseball. So first, we'll start with our comeback player of the year. So we'll do one for the American League, one for the National League. Over in the American League, we're going to go with right-handed pitcher Jacob deGrom. He had a fine season in 2025. He pitched to a 12-8 win-loss record with a 2.97 ERA and 172 2/3 innings pitched. He racked up 185 strikeouts and a .92 WHIP. Congrats to deGrom. We're going to be curious once the MLB Awards show releases their winners of each of these trophies, and we'll see how right we are, or at least align, because this is what we think, in our opinion, and we'll see how much it aligns with MLB's opinion. Over in the National League, we went with Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Atlanta Braves. In 2025, he appeared in 95 games. He had 290 with 21 home runs, 42 RBIs, and a 935 OPS. It's always electrifying when you see Acuna back in the lineup. Hopefully in 2026 and beyond, we can see him for an extended period of time indeed. Now, for the Rookie of the Year award, we are going to start in the American League. We are going to go with Athletics first baseman Nick Kurtz. In 117 games, he had 290 with 36 home runs, 86 runs batted in, 90 runs scored, 26 doubles, and a 1.002 OPS. Impressive stuff from the Big Amish. And then over in the National League, we're going with Atlanta Braves catcher Drake Baldwin. On the year, he appeared in 124 games. He had 274 with 19 home runs, 80 runs batted in, 18 doubles, and an 810 OPS. So congrats to those two young budding stars. The best is yet to come for both of those indeed. Let's step away from the field and get to the top of the dugout with our managers of the year. So we're going to start in the American League. We had it down between two guys, and we went with this guy. Manager in his first full season at the helm, Dan Wilson of the Seattle Mariners. Congrats. They went 90-72 on the year. They win the American League West, their first playoff victory since 2001, as well as advancing to the American League Championship Series for the first time since 2001. It's been a dream year for the Mariners. They had the home run leader. They had the home run derby champion. They keep advancing, and now they have an opportunity to advance to the biggest prize, an opportunity to win a World Series, as long as they are able to get through the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's been a fine season up in the Pacific Northwest, and Dan Wilson has had his DNA all over that team. Over the National League, we're going with Brewers manager Pat Murphy. He led this team to the league's best 97-65 record. They won this NL Central and are back into the NLCS for the first time since 2018. This team didn't have high hopes of expectations in terms of from the national media, but they believed within. They stuck with who they had. And this team of, again, quote unquote, average Joes is one step away from getting back to the World Series for the first time since 1982. So I believe those two are very deserving of this award. There's many other baseball minds that I think led their teams to successful seasons in their own right, but this is who we believe are the two guys that are most deserving. We selected our team of the year. So we went with the Toronto Blue Jays, who finished tied with the American League's best record at 94-68. They won the American League East. They are 1 year removed from when they finished last year, 74-88. So they added 20 wins into the win column. That is unheard of for most instances. So that's such a quick turnaround. And it's a shout out to their change in philosophy at the baseball operations level. They went from a team that seemed to be swinging from their heels, trying to play wall ball and rely on their offense as compared to relying on their pitching and defense. Now, instead, they've really transitioned to have that higher contact ability, put the ball in play with 2 strikes, lower their strikeout rate, lean on the strength of their starting pitching, and let their starting pitching work deeper into games and pitch to contact more as compared to trying to be a higher strikeout pitching staff, which is why they made the certain moves to really retool their defense. And it showed. They play complete baseball in all 3 phases of the game, and they have an opportunity now. They're 1 step away from getting back to the World Series for the first time since 1993, which is the last time they won the World Series title too as well. So a lot to like there. Congrats to John Schneider and that club with what they've done so far. But I'm sure they have their eyes on a much bigger prize indeed. All right. A couple more awards to give out. We're going to give out the Hank Aaron Award, 1 from each league. So this is for the best offensive player in the American League and National League. So we'll give in the American League, we're going to go with Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. In 152 games, he had .331 with 53 home runs, 114 runs batted in, and a 1.144 OPS. And over in the National League, we're going to give it to Philadelphia Phillies designated hitter Kyle Schwarber. He played in all 162 games. He had .240 with 56 home runs, 132 RBIs, and a .928 OPS. And then for our last 2 awards, the most prestigious awards, the Cy Young, which is each league's best pitcher. We'll start over the American League. We believe that Tarik Skubal will go back-to-back and win this year's Cy Young. In 31 games started, he pitched to a 13-6 win-loss record with a 2.21 ERA. In 195 and a third innings pitched, he racked up 241 strikeouts and pitched to a .89 win. And then over in the National League, we believe this guy potentially at worst is the 2nd best pitcher in baseball, but he seems absolutely dominant every time he steps the mound. He is going to win his first Cy Young of his career, the first of many to come. Of course, I'm talking about Pittsburgh Pirates right-handed pitcher Paul Skeens. In 32 games started, he pitched to a 10-10 win-loss record with a 1.97 ERA. Unbelievable stuff. In 187 and 2/3 innings pitched, he racked up 216 strikeouts and pitched to a .95 win. And now for the grand finale, our most valuable player. Over in the American League, we decided that we believe that catcher Cal Raleigh from the Seattle Mariners will take home the most valuable player for this year. On the year, he played in 159 games, hit for a .246 batting average, 60 home runs, 125 RBIs, and a .948 OPS. We believe we really dug into the word most valuable, or the words most valuable, and we believe that with all the catching duties that he does, managing this elite pitching staff and leading the whole league in home runs and being a key contributor to why this Mariners team won the division and is well on their way to potentially representing the American League in the World Series. I think if you take Raleigh away from the team, the offensive production greatly reduces as compared to if you take Aaron Judge out of the Yankees. Yes, you have a negative effect. I do think there's more of a supporting cast over in New York than in Seattle. So congrats to Cal Raleigh. He's earned our first annual MVP award. And then over in the National League, we went with Shohei Ohtani for his efforts at the plate and on the mound too as well. We'll give you his offensive numbers since his pitching came on later in the year. He hit a .282 for a batting average, 55 home runs, which was the most of his career in a single season, 102 RBIs, and a 1.014 OPS. That's a wrap on the first annual Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players Award Show. And that concludes our Monday edition of our show. So on today's show, we did a Game 5 recap of how the division series wrapped up. We gave you a championship series preview. We gave our predictions where we believe that the Toronto Blue Jays will be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers in this year's World Series. And then before we got on out of here, as you just heard, we gave out some major awards for the first time in Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players history. So many quality individual performances. Baseball's hot in the streets. And we do believe so much more is to come for the remainder of this postseason, as well as 2026 and beyond. We'll be back here behind the mic for Friday's show, as we'll recap what's gone down in the championship series so far. And we'll dive into a couple of other baseball topics to be determined. We do know it's the off season for the majority of teams. So if any MLB news does occur in the circulation, we'll be sure to keep you updated. We may provide an update on where some new managers are as compared to some managers that were let go, so they have an idea of some open vacancies heading into the 2026 season. That does it for today's show. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. We're very excited to be talking about all the baseball that's going on thus far in October. And if you're listening, your favorite team is still alive. We hope that you enjoy every pitch, every moment, because it's certainly heightened in October baseball. Have a good day, everyone. Have a great week. We'll be back here again chatting on Friday, talking about all the glorious baseball that is going on and is still to come. Play ball.